I'm still living in Hot Springs, but I have a cabin down in Lake Millwood, and y'all know where that is, down in southwest Arkansas. And I was staying in my cabin, and it was the second week in December. It was a misty day, kind of foggy and cool. And as I was going to work, it was 6:45 in the morning. And as I was going to work, I passed a hay meadow, and it's down in the boondocks there in southwest Arkansas. And I looked up and I saw something crossing the field. I'm an avid hunter and fisherman. I've been doing that all my life, and I know what's in the woods and what's not in the woods. And it just looked strange to me, really strange. And I saw it. It was walking across this field about 200 yards from me, and it was also walking upright. And the hay meadow had been cut. Of course, it was in the wintertime, but it was just, there wasn't any obstructions except a few trees around a little pond. Well, I knew it was strange, and I always keep a camera in my car that I take pictures of fish and game and stuff like that with, hang it up. But I'm technologically impaired. I don't do internet. When I stopped being an athletic director, I absolutely quit any of the technology. And this old camera still had the film in it. Well, I took 3 pictures of this thing crossing the field, and it's at 200 yards at a little bitty camera, so it really wasn't just great. 2 of the pictures were just, you couldn't make out anything. The 3rd picture, you could make out head and shoulders real good. And it was, and if you magnified it, like I just use a regular magnifying glass, it was really pretty clear. I knew when it was walking across the pasture, it wasn't a horse, it wasn't a cow, it wasn't a coyote, we even got a few bear down, it wasn't a bear, it wasn't anything that I've ever seen in the woods. And what really got my attention, when it got to the end of the pasture, there was just a normal barbed wire fence around the fence. I'm 6 foot tall, and if I'm gonna cross that fence, I gotta put my hand on it, press it down, and put one leg over, then put the other leg over. When this animal came to that fence, it stepped over it just like you or I'd step over a crack in the sidewalk. And I looked at a tree and kind of measured where it was on that tree, and I did that instinctively. Well, it was misty and foggy, like I said, and I drove around that hay meadow and came back on the back side where it went back into the woods, and it wasn't any tracks, wasn't anything like that. It was just grass there. Well, I took that picture and had them developed, and I was real anxious, when I did. Like I said, 2 of them didn't come out any good, and 1 of them was pretty good. Well, the show, I'm sure some of y'all are familiar with the show Finding Bigfoot, that they came to Texarkana and somehow, some way found out I had these photos, invited me to bring it up there to them have that town hall meeting. Well, I brought it up there, and I brought the photo up there, and they looked at it, and the producer came to me and she said, "We'd like to do an episode about what you saw and how you did it, reenactment." And I went home and I told my wife and the kids, and my daughter started crying, and she said, "Well, I don't want you to do that. People are going to think you're crazy," and all that kind of stuff like that. So I didn't do it, and I did. Well, then they asked me a second time, and I said, "I'm not telling anybody. I'm going to do it." So I did, and I was on the episode. It was in 2012. It was the episode where they went to Fouke and returned to Boggy Creek, and they did my story on there. Well, the end of this story is this: they asked to borrow that picture, and they were going to blow it up and use it on that show. And they got it, and I didn't see it. And after they came and filmed it and everything, like I asked them about it, they said, "You have to talk to the producer." The producer was a real nice young woman, and she said, "Somebody stole your photo." And I said, and thank goodness I showed it to a bunch of people. It wasn't like somebody didn't see it, but I showed it to a bunch of people. And they think some type of researcher got that photo, and that's what they told me. But Bobo came to my place and did that Finding Bigfoot episode, and it was well and good. Well, the producer tried to get me to say that it was 100% of Bigfoot, and I said, "Ma'am, there's no doubt in my mind that's what it had to be. But I said, you know, I was at 200 yards. I said it was either a 7-foot man in a ghillie suit that was a great athlete, or it was a Bigfoot. And you know, I firmly believe that I saw one, and I watched it, and that spurred me. I've always been interested in that. I've always liked it. Well, that spurred me to do a lot of investigation. Once I retired, after 40 years of coaching, I retired, and I started investigating a lot of Bigfoot sightings, and I wrote a book that covers from Akron, Arkansas, on the Arkansas side over to Oklahoma, down to Idabel, and down to Fountain, Texarkana. And I've talked to a bunch of people that had sightings there that I believe to be true. And it was very, very interesting, and it's called Bigfoot Encounters, Ghost Stories, and UFO Sightings. And it's done real well now, but it's a good read. It's all short stories. But I personally believe 100% that you know, what I saw with Bigfoot. There's no other explanation for it. There's none whatsoever. But like that gentleman before me, it'll change you. I mean, you know, it just changes the way you think about things. But there's no doubt in my mind that I saw one.
Well, you'll notice by my accent, I don't come from around here. I'm from Wisconsin, or if you know anything about the Cubbies losing their division to the Brewers, we're from Wisconsin. So, and Aaron Rodgers, we're proud of him, and Brett Favre, we were proud of him too. But anyway, I got a lot of stories like these other guys. I don't have a book. I take a biblical perspective on all of this, and I agree with a lot of the things that were said about the Christian viewpoint tonight. If you look in the book of Job, you'll see in the 41st chapter where God's describing a part of his creation to Job. And it's a fire-breathing dragon. And he says, you can't tame it, and there's no place to spear it or anything. And it doesn't exactly say that, but you can't kill it. And it's just basically part of the creation. I didn't write the book, that's what it says. And I think, you know, seeing all the dinosaur bones and how big they are and everything, who can not say that the possibility of Bigfoot's there? It doesn't make sense. And with M.K. Davis and doing the Gimlin film, the Rob? Patterson, I always forget his name, you know, because he's not with us anymore, but I don't know. But anyway, there's different sides to Bigfoot, and I thought I could go in northern Wisconsin and find Bigfoot. I want to just catch a glimpse of one because there's too many people and too many photographs, and I got to set this in my mind what's going on here. So we go up there, we remote camp in the national forests, and nothing, just a big zero. So I come back, and I retired not too long before that. And I said, well, we'll just put Bigfoot off to the side for now. And I went to, you know, you retire, you got to exercise a little bit, so I'm walking around exercising, and I'm looking at the trees. And I'm saying, well, the wind does things to trees, but why are these trees all bent over and the end of them pushed into the ground, which we know as a structure, they're called. It's in part of the whole thing of structure. And I'm looking around, and I'm seeing more and more of this. So I decided to continue on to different areas. I can't tell you the area because I'm trying to protect people, and I'm trying to protect this group that I've been studying for about 2.5 years. So I see that structure and more structures, and I see strange things going on. Finally, I said, well, I gotta wait for rain to come so I can look for prints. And sure enough, rain came and I found prints. So I said, well, now I've got prints, but I didn't do any cast. I didn't know how to do it, and I wasn't going to deal with that. I was going to get a picture or a video. So I bought a game cam, and I put the game cam up in different places for months, and I finally got it in the right place at the right time, and I got a whole group of them on it. And I gave that to M.K. Davis today, because I know out of him and Thinker Thunker and Bigfoot Tony, he's on the right track, because if you look at his video of the hair sample, you'll see that that does something to the light so that you cannot see these Bigfoot. And it's really amazing. And I've got more stories to tell about that too. So I got a picture to him, and I'm hoping he can do something with that, because I've got blue Sasquatch in there, I've got green Sasquatch in there, and a whole group of them. So as the story goes on, there's a funny side to Bigfoot. I always believe, and I still believe this, that there's two things that motivate Bigfoot, and that's instinct and survival, out of what I've seen and experienced. But I found out where they were getting into a certain area, so I went on the other side to see where they were coming in, and I found signs of them there with structures. So I started looking around. I went into a construction. They were having some condominiums built. And I went over there, and then I saw, what are all these roofing tiles doing around, spread out in the middle of the woods? And I realized Bigfoot had been watching the roofers, and they had stolen these shingles and spread them out around in the woods. I didn't know they were interested in roofing. But that was weird. And I decided, right then and there that I knew exactly where they were. So as further study went on, I was, in wintertime, we get ice on the paths. You've got paths already around. We've got ice. From just this last winter, I had to use ice cleats to walk around and look for Bigfoot. And I'm walking on this path, and just real slow and quiet, because otherwise I would fall right on my back and I'd break my head open. And I'm going real slow, and there's like this line of scrub trees, and the path goes through there. There's a path cut through, and I hear on the other side branches breaking and cracking, and more than one area. One area there, another area a little further, and I come through there and I look, and here there's this branch being broke right in front of about 75 to 100 feet in front of me, and I can't see what's breaking it. And I hear these other people talk about how they can't see them very well, and I didn't see anything. It was just branches breaking, then it stopped. And I kept my eye on that. I got around far enough, and I just kept and watched for a bit. And I could hear it breathing real heavy. I think it went down to the ground and was blending in. And now, mind you, this is all winter. There's no foliage, just bare trees and branches. And so then I knew there was another group nearby. I had known that Bigfoot mimic sounds and mimic voices. So I went over where they were, the rest of the group, and I'm sure there was at least 3 of them or more in this group. And I just stood up on a little bank there, and I listened, and all of a sudden there was this giggling going back and forth, like 2 guys giggling, like they were making a joke on somebody. And I knew they were kind of trying to throw me off that they were human, because I knew they were not human. So then I went back. I didn't like that, so I went back and I stood there and tried to see where this heavy breathing, and it was getting heavier and louder. And I was by myself. I always do this by myself. I think they're not intimidated by me at all. They've never thrown anything. They've never growled at me. And I watched, and I said, it's time to leave. They're just getting a little too heavy, and they're breathing, and I'm by myself. I'm just going to leave. So that took care of that. Then another incident, I was down by this lake, and I was walking along. There's like these fingers going up a bluff. And I decided to go up one of the fingers, get back onto the main trail. And going up on one side of these, there's a bunch of trees on top, but there was a break in the trees. So I look through that break, and I see some pine trees. I see one pine tree. All of a sudden, something jet black jumped out of there. And I couldn't see it until it left the pine tree. And it ran on all 4s. It was only about this high, about 3 feet off the ground. Its arms were as long as its legs. It looked like it had no neck, but I know now, after seeing on Kay Davis's film, that it does have a neck. And they do turn their head. But it ran about maybe about 3 or 4 times and jumped right by another. It became part of the pine tree again, it looked like. But that's just the way they blend in. So that was my sighting of Bigfoot, and I can't explain it, and I'm hoping someday we will, but with that hair sample analysis by Mr. Davis, I think that's a pretty good thing. And he's going to really help us. I hope my picture helps out and see it. I hope he posts it on YouTube. That's where I see all his films. And just recently, I got to give a shout out to Dr. Santel, because last year he gave me an idea on how I always use one game cam and I try to devise different ways to get video of them. And I put the game cam right about this height, aiming straight down the trunk, and I put the honey with the comb in it. I jammed it into a branch, and I got some result with that. And there's always dead spots when you're trying to get some interaction. There's dead spots where nothing happens, and people that research them know that, I'm sure. And I thought I could get a picture of its hand reaching in to get some of that honey. No way, not with Bigfoot. He tore the whole branch off, and it went rolling down, and he just left it there. And now I took all the cameras away, and I've been checking every so often to see if he's going to take the honeycomb. He's punishing me because I tried to trick him again. And I've had Bigfoot leave me different things along the path. They like to take twine and twist it around pieces of branch. And it's like a gift. They've left those gifts for me. I left them gifts. That's the first thing I tried. I didn't tell you that before, but gifting is what I tried, because Barb and Gabby over in, if anybody knows Barb and Gabby, they use gifting, and I like that idea, and that's what I do right now. And I know certain things that they like because I've seen them. I've seen them steal tarp and play around with a tarp in the woods. I fold it up and put it away under a front, and be out spread out again, like someone was playing with it. So they like those, I know that. I think they like Mylar balloons because of the texture. But there's a lot I could talk about with Bigfoot, and they like to play games, and I've seen stick structures too. They had left me a stick structure of a square, and there's so many X's. I think the X's are like an arrow. When friendship was an arrow and a cross, I believe Indians used to do, and I think that has something to do with it. But I could talk here all night about this because there's a lot of different things I've come upon them structure-wise. I've got tons of pictures, and I'm hoping to get video of them. And it's just an interesting thing. I mean them no harm, and they mean me no harm. I know that. I think we've got a mutual thing, and it's low key, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about it. That's my objective. Thank you.
So my name is Jeff Taylor. I was 2 years ago. I took my boy camping on a lake nearby, and during the night we heard some sounds, so tapping and such. And then in the morning we decided to get up and go exploring around the lake. We were the only ones at the campsite that night. Nice, quiet, peaceful morning, and so we took off, went on a little walk down a little trail, and then broke off the trail closer to the lake. And as we started getting closer to the lake, we suddenly heard a big old splash with some running sound. And as I looked, I saw a crane flying. I thought, oh, okay, that's just a bird right there. So we continued on about another 250 to 300 feet down into some more marshy area, and hadn't really expected anything. Weren't really looking for Bigfoot at all, or any sort of creature, just enjoying the morning. And as we got closer to the lake, we were within probably 75 yards of the lake, and about from here to the back of the crowd here. and all of a sudden you heard another splash. And I looked over and saw a creature stand up and look over at us. I couldn't see it, we weren't close enough, and obscured, but all of a sudden it took off and ran as fast as I've ever seen. We heard the brush breaking, and of course we were both freaked out, my heart's beating, and as best I could, we took a picture of it and got the best snapshot we could. But it was one of those experiences. I've never had one before, I've never had one since, wasn't really looking for it, and it was purely amazing, truly amazing. So I'm glad I had that experience.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, as you can tell from my accent, I'm not from here either. I'm actually from the Pacific Northwest. I'm from Washington State. And I was telling a classmate of mine that I was coming here, and he said, well, I've got to tell you a story. He said, a couple months after we graduated, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he had a dune buggy. And where I lived, in central Washington, there's a lot of orchards. And he was driving along on this road, and it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden and he wasn't going very fast, and all of a sudden he passes something tall and hairy, about 8 feet, and he said the stench was horrendous. Now it's a dune buggy, so it's lots of open air, so he slows down as he's going by this creature. It's looking at him, he's looking at it, and he gets by at about a half a mile and he says, well, I think I'm going to turn around and go back and look at it. Well, he was with this gal, and as he turns around to go back and look at it, she's like freaking out. She's screaming and she's crying. And he realizes that this creature is bigger than his dune buggy. So maybe he should not be going back to check it out. So he turns around and takes off. And he said to this day, this has been a long time, this has been 40 years, he said to this day, he can still smell it, he can still see its face, and he can still feel what he felt that day when he drove by this creature. So, there you go.
We come down here quite a bit, like about every time there's an event going on. And several years ago, back before they built the bathrooms on the boys' dorms over here, it was all open in the back, there were just windows along there. We decided one year, me and another counselor, we were going to scare the boys with the Bigfoot stories. And so we told them stories, and as they got in bed, I went over on the hill to the west of here, and he was over here by the office. And he hollered a big, loud holler, trying to scare the boys. And then I hollered one over on the west hill down by the A-frames, and then somebody else hollered down the woods. I thought, wow, we got somebody else helping us out here. So I didn't think nothing of it anyway. We going back, talk a little bit, and go to bed, and get up the next morning, and the boys are telling us, yeah, we heard Bigfoot last night. So you did? Yeah, we heard him hollering, and then we heard him out behind the dorms. We told them that was just they said, no, we really heard somebody behind the doors. So we go out there to look, and sure enough, right by the windows where the boys were sleeping, you can see footprints probably even 12, 13, 14 inches long. And the grass, it was the pine needles, and they were soft, so it made a perfect impression in the grass. I mean, you can see all the toes, perfect impressions. And then you can see where his knees knelt down by the window, and smudges on the windows where he was looking in at the boys that night. And we had a hard time getting them to go to sleep the next night.
All right, this story is, I hadn't seen Bigfoot, but my son has. He's here with me. And I was there with him that night. We were out in Okarche, Oklahoma, and we were out on some land there, and it's just a bunch of land out there, and they had a lot of trees, and it's on this lake, or a big pond out there. And we were out there for a camp out. It was a father and son camp out, and it's out again out in the middle of nowhere. Drive for a good 45 minutes to get out there. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, my son said he had to go to the bathroom. And of course, we get up and we wander over, and it's the moon's out. You can see really well. A lot of stars out in the sky, and so I go into the outhouse, and he's standing outside, and I hear this big splash, and I'm thinking he threw something in the water. And I open the door, and I come out, and I see the water rippling, and it's probably about 100 yards from us. And my son, his eyes were just huge. And he says, "Dad, I just saw Bigfoot." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, tell me about it." And he told me, he said that he had heard something move, and heard some stomping or moving in the grass and in the trees, and he looked over and he said he saw something big. And I'm 6'5", and he said, "Dad, it was a lot bigger than you." And he saw it push this tree into the water. And he just stood there watching this happen. And when I came out, he said he was watching, and he said it just disappeared. And like I said, I heard it splash, and I saw the water ripple. But at that point, I became a believer. I didn't physically see it, but I heard it, saw the water rippling, and I knew that my son was telling the God's honest truth about what he saw. And so we went to bed that night, and I tried to get some sleep, a little bit hard to after that, but the next day I looked over there, and there was no way anyone could have easily gotten to where that had happened. And then I started thinking about it, and that was a couple years ago, and it was just a few months before October 1st of 2016 when we came down here for the first time. But just a few months ago, I pulled that area up on Google Maps, and there's actually, it's a little island that was out there. So there's no way a kid or somebody could have gotten out to it without making a lot of noise, and we would have seen it. But again, that was the night I became a believer, and my son to this day knows he saw Bigfoot.
Thank you. So tell you my story real quick.
Hi, my name's Scott. I'm actually like a relative of Troy's here. And I was thinking about this when the fellow over here was asking about if Troy thought there was some kind of a supernatural power or paranormal power to not be seen. Now, this is not a Bigfoot story per se, but I've got some perspective on it. I'm like half Cherokee. I had a grandfather, God rest his soul, we lost him in about 1991, but he was a full-blooded Cherokee, call him a medicine worker. And from the time that I was probably 6 or 8 years old, I can remember hearing these spooky stories about, spirits and owls and shapeshifters and all kinds of things like that. And one of the things that I would hear about, it was pretty fascinating to me, was a person developing the ability to become invisible. And they would do this by paranormal means. They had developed a relationship, per se, with the spirit world to the point where they were assisted in that way at camouflage. The story was that, let's say you're walking down a trail and you see somebody coming towards you that you don't want to see, you don't want to talk to, you don't want them to see you, that you could learn this, what they call medicine, to reach over and you would just take a hold of a tree branch and you would say these certain words, or sing a song, an incantation, and that person would walk right past you, maybe even bump into you. They would never see you. So that was pretty fascinating to me as a kid. When I was in my junior high and high school years, I attended a church. This is over in Del City, Oklahoma, where I grew up, where we would go over into New Mexico every year to a camp called Blue Haven, which is pretty close to Las Vegas, New Mexico, up there in northern New Mexico. And I think it was probably the third or fourth time that I was up there, they would divide everybody up into groups. You'd have different cabins, and then usually one night during the week, everybody would go out of the cabins and go up in the mountains somewhere, weather permitting, and just make a fire like this out on the open ground somewhere, and people would sleep around it in their sleeping bags. Of course, one of the big kicks that you could do was discover where one of the other cabins was. And then, get the drop on them, sneak over there and do something to scare them or disturb them in the night. Actually, it never happened, but we were always on the lookout for them. But I think it was probably my junior year in high school. I think it was actually in the summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school. We're up in the mountains doing that. I'm at the camp. It's the night where all the cabins go out into the woods. So we're out there on the side of some mountain, and it was getting later, it was getting quiet, and we became aware that there's somebody or something out there in the woods sneaking around. You could hear it. And then we would hear things like rocks being thrown. Somebody was knocking on the trees. Of course, there's a couple of different considerations. Okay, that's probably somebody from the other cabins that have found us. They're trying to mess with us. Or, these rocks flying in. I've heard these Bigfoot stories and everything. Maybe it could be that. So it's scaring the heck out of the guys that I'm with out there. And, it's like we could hear these noises all around us. Well, there was this kid, I think he was from Amarillo, a little Hispanic guy. He's standing there beside me. He's like, there they are. Takes off running over, I don't know, 30, 40 feet over from the campfire. I don't see anything, but I follow him. We go running over there, and all of a sudden that kid stops. I'm a big guy, about the same size as I am now. I've got so much momentum going. He stops right in front of me. He's about to get ran over. Right before I ran into him, and we both just rolled over on the ground, I see a guy there. He's Hispanic looking. He's wearing a pair of Levi's. Remember those old boots that years ago we used to call waffle stompers? He's wearing those. White t-shirt, blue bandana, one of these trucker's hats. He's just standing like this, if you can see me. He's kind of kneeled down, and he's holding on to a tree branch. Hit the ground, roll over. He's not there anymore. Okay, the terrain is just like Troy was describing, or just like what we're looking at right here. There's pine trees. The branches are all high up. There was this little smaller tree there that he'd been hanging on to, but there's nowhere for him to go, especially in a split second. Just gone. Well, the hair on the back of my neck stands up, and I'm thinking, this is Indian medicine. This is a person that has that ability to disappear. Well, I'm with a bunch of, kids from suburbia. They haven't heard some of these stories like I've been hearing. So now I'm like, maybe we ought to be on the lookout here, where everybody else is kind of scared and they're wanting to go to sleep. So they get up around that fire, and me and the other guys, we decide we're going to employ this old trick that I've read like in a Louis L'Amour novel or something else Troy was talking about. There's a fire, and we realize that we get away from that fire and sit with our backs up against a tree. Whoever's out there can't really see us. So we go just a little bit up the hill and put our backs against these trees, and we're looking at the top of this hill, and the moon's coming up on the other side of it, so it's backlit. Anything moves up there, you can see it. So we're sitting there 30 or 40 minutes, and like I said, I'm on alert that somebody with these kind of paranormal skills is maybe out here. It's not our fellow campers, it's maybe some of these local Indians or somebody out there. And I'm really concentrating. I'm thinking, man, they've got the ability to deceive us and be invisible maybe, so I'm really focused. 30 minutes goes by. Sure enough, I see this head and shoulders pop up from behind a bush up on the ridge. It's backlit by the moon. And then he goes scampering across this opening and into another little group of brush. And it shakes. And there's this, my friend is sitting 3 feet to my right. And I say, okay, let's go. And he's like, what, did you see something? And I was stunned. I was like, are you telling me you didn't just see that? He's like, see what? I was like, man, let's just go back over here by the campfire. And that was kind of it. Nothing happened after that. We heard a little bit more movement out there. But I went away from that going, there's somebody out there that's got that ability to become invisible. So I was pretty young when that happened. I've been exposed to some more of that Indian medicine and that lore. I've seen some stuff. I've told people here, I've seen what I would call a spirit 5 or 6 times. I've had interactions with owls and things like that that were, I believe, the result of Indian medicine. Never seen a Bigfoot. Don't have any experience. Well, my first one was after everything in here closed down with the speakers. I went to my car and I decided to go down there, down the backside where I was here, and they found some tracks and everything. And I actually spotted a track all by myself that was on the way to the other ones that they'd already casted. And that's my first Bigfoot experience. There's a track. I took a picture of it. It's kind of a nice specimen of a track. So, to his point, his question, I definitely believe that there are people with the ability to become invisible, to camouflage themselves by spiritual means. And as I got a little older, talking to this grandfather of mine before we left, the subject of Bigfoot eventually did come up. And what he told me was they have medicine. They have the ability to camouflage themselves and not be seen. Some even thought, well, these creatures are what you might call plane shifters. They're subtle creatures. They can be seen or not seen at their own discretion. They have that ability. So I've never seen one. Don't have any experiences other than finding that track earlier today out there. But I do believe that that ability exists, and that these creatures have a culture, family relationships, some would even say a language. I saw one of the presentations in here earlier where they're making symbols. It looks like they have some kind of a spiritual awareness, or, it's possible that they just might be able to do that. And that would possibly explain why we can't catch them. We can't get it nailed down yet. I think that's definitely possible.
Thank you, Scott.